It is June 29th, 2016. This is Mike Callahan, and welcome to the Watchman News. Tonight we have another episode of No Holds Barred with Kathy Rubio. Our guest will be Jim Fetzer. So let's go ahead and get Kathy on the line here.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
You just said that. I said the same thing. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Right at the same time you were saying it.
Well, you know, it's kind of one of those things that I was like, wow, I've got 3 minutes left. What can I ramble on about in 3 minutes?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I think we might be doing an extra show this week.
Oh, yeah?
I got to see how we can possibly put together the things that God has shown us for the last few days.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to take everybody out of the matrix.
All right.
God has showed us why we're in there, how we got in there, and how to come out. So some of the information that took us into that little dive came from that doctor last night.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you what, every dot connected. Didn't miss a one.
Really?
So now we're just figuring out how can we lay this all out for the people to see and understand what we're saying, because it's hard not to get angry.
Right.
I was so angry this morning. I sat in my friend's house and said, I don't care. I don't care what God is going to do. I don't care what Satan's going to do. I'm going to kick him straight in the face. I said, I've had enough. I'm all done now. I was ranting and raving. And then later on, I had hours I've spent talking to people today and getting all this down in the brain here of how Satan did all this, how it was. Oh, this is just going to be really good.
I had a wonderful conversation with Lon.
That's who I'm talking about.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Well, we just got done talking again. I'm like, ah.
Good deal.
But you know, when God starts to show you things that are going to set you free, you can't help but be so excited. And then you jump from one thing to the other thing, to the other thing, to the other thing, and oh dear. So do we have it opened up for questions and answers tonight for Jim?
Yeah, I've got the phone line set up. Is Jim ready?
Yeah, he's ready.
All righty, let me get him in here.
Okay.
How's the echo thing doing?
Yes,
I have it right now. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Hi, good.
Good. Jim, this is Mike Callahan, my co-host.
Howdy.
Okay.
I'm a little bit frazzled today, but it's because we came upon a lot of good things today, a lot of information that'll take us out of the matrix.
Okay.
Oh, it's good stuff. I
Okay.
can't wait to get a hold of Scott.
Scott Bennett?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, good.
So how are you, Jim?
Good, very good. Busy. I'm just completing a new book on 9/11. Actually, I'm doing the index. It's going to be like 460 pages, hundreds of photographs, very comprehensive, divided into 8 sections, 3 chapters each. Some excellent contributors. It's going to be very powerful, and it's going to be out next month.
Next month. Do we have time to read that long book?
Well,
the way things are going in this world,
I've
Jim,
got the prologue, which gives you an overview already on my blog. It's entitled 9/11, the who, the how, and the why.
Good. Okay.
So there you get an overview that'll give you a good idea of the contents of the book, which are elaborated in great detail. Tremendous amount of substantiation for every claim that I make in that introduction.
Okay. I'm going to have you do a little bio on yourself there.
Sure.
Okay. Anytime. Hello?
I'm here. Oh, you mean for me to start now with the bio?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure, Kathy. Okay, I'm pleased. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was commissioned in the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant upon graduation from Princeton, served 4 years, resigned my commission as a captain to enter graduate school, earned my PhD in the history and the philosophy of science to embark upon a 35-year career as a professor of philosophy, offering courses principally in logic, critical thinking, and scientific reasoning. I received a lot of recognition and awards for my research and my teaching. I, as an academician, published over 24 books, mostly on technical philosophical subjects. But also, I became interested in the assassination of JFK in the wake of absurd criticism being directed at the serious critics of the Warren Commission by the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the AMA, which led me to infer that perhaps some of us with special background and ability ought to become involved. And I began a very long research endeavor with JFK, including chairing or co-chairing 5 different national conferences, editing 3 classic books on the assassination, where I brought together the best people and we shattered the cover-up. Assassination Science, 1998, Murder in Dealey Plaza, 2000, The Great Zapruder Film Hoax, 2003, because I was on the Duluth campus of the University of Minnesota when Senator Paul Wellstone's plane came down, which I thought was very, very odd. I began investigating, published 10 articles in the alternative newspaper in Duluth, and then co-authored a book on his death entitled American Assassination, The Strange Death of Senator Paul Wellstone. In 2005, this is just before I retired from the University of Minnesota, I founded Scholars for 9/11 Truth. I would organize its first conference here in Madison, where I moved after my retirement, and publish its first book entitled The 9/11 Conspiracy 2007. Since then, I've become very involved in tackling the other politically loaded, complex, and controversial events of our time, including Sandy Hook, or my book on Sandy Hook, which had 13 contributors, including 6 PhD, current or retired college professors, which demonstrates that the school was closed by 2008, that there were no students there, that it was a FEMA drill. We even have the manual for the 2-day drill with a rehearsal on the 13th, going live on the 14th. Was banned by Amazon.com less than a month after it had gone on sale, even though it had sold nearly 500 copies. Jay Carney had been a White House spokesman, had gone to Amazon as senior vice president. It blows the whole Obama gun control agenda to pieces by demonstrating fakery. I would subsequently publish a book on the Boston bombing, which is simply ludicrous. Yeah, again, with a group of very experts, students of Boston, where the police were on bullhorns calling out, "This is a drill, this is a drill," where the Boston Globe was even tweeting that a demonstration bomb would be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities, and that a second tweet that one would be set off in a minute in front of the library, and a minute later one goes off in front of the Boston Public Library. There's noise and smoke, but I can assure you, as a former artillery officer in the Marine Corps, these were not powerful explosives, not powerful enough to kill anybody. You look through the smoke and you see bodies, missing body parts, but there is no blood. As Lorraine Day, who was the chief of trauma surgery at San Francisco General Hospital for 25 years, observed, that's a physiological impossibility. You can't have limbs blown off by an explosion and there be no blood. The blood only showed up later, and it's fake blood. Hollywood blood came out of tubes. I was astonished when Nathan Folks, a Hollywood producer and director, suggested to me that they'd actually used a smoke machine. And we poured through all the photos and videos we had available. We found indeed they had, and it was so striking. I put a photograph of the smoke machine on the back cover of the book, and Nobody Died in Boston either, where, we demonstrate the whole thing was an elaborate charade. As at Sandy Hook, in Boston, there was no rush of EMTs to the scene, no string of ambulances to rush the wounded off to hospitals. Indeed, in Boston, the police even held back 2 Roman Catholic priests who wanted to come to the apparently injured to administer last rites. But of course, the police knew that they would blow the cover because these weren't actually injured persons. In fact, one of the most striking cases is a guy who's referred to as Jeff Bauman, where he is Lying on the ground, in the smoke, you can see someone in a hoodie who's attaching a false bone prosthesis to his leg. There is no blood there. If this had been a real injury, there would have been blood spurting everywhere because he lost both legs below the knees. You would be unconscious in 1 minute, dead in 2. Instead, he's lying there keeping his head up from the sidewalk because people spit on sidewalks. A bit of delicacy you're not going to observe in anyone who's actually suffered a serious injury. He's put into a wheelchair, which is exactly the wrong thing to do with anyone suffering from this type of injury, because then gravity helps to draw the blood out. As they whisk him away in the wheelchair, the vibrations cause the false prosthesis to come loose and they have to stop and reattach it. 19 days later, the same guy is supposed to be seen in a Boston Bruins game. This is much too fast to recover from the loss of your legs. I had a very interesting conversation with Dr. Stan Monteith before his departure for greener pastures, where Stan was an orthopedic surgeon who had performed amputations. And he explained that it takes 3 months just to recover from the amputation, another 3 to learn to get along without your legs. But this Jeff Bauman is real cheerful, and believe it or not, now he has his legs missing above the knee. Before they were below the knee. The first Jeff Bauman was missing the little finger on his left hand. This Jeff Bauman has all 10 fingers. And lo and behold, there's even a third Jeff Bauman who shows up at a baseball game. And this Jeff Bauman, who's being wheeled out by Carlos Arredondo, whom Nathan Folks, the Hollywood producer-director, had identified as an actor he cast in one of his own films. And the third Jeff Bauman has no legs at all, not even thighs. So if anyone has any doubt whether they're using crisis actors in Boston, this case is rather decisive. And I published about it several places. There's a YouTube entitled Boston Strong, The 3 Jeff Baumans. And on my blog, there's an article entitled Proof the Boston Bombing Was Faked in 3 Easy Steps, number 1, number 2, number 3. More to add about any of this or any other subject you'd like to address.
You know, next week we're going to have Wolfgang Halbig on, and he's going to be talking to us about the hearings that he's just now going back to.
Yeah, well, Wolfgang's great. Wolfgang and I traveled together to Newtown. We went there to speak to the Board of Education. We visited Sandy Hook Elementary School's former location because it had already been taken down and completely destroyed, where those involved in the demolition were required to sign lifetime gag orders, not being allowed to speak for the duration of their life about what they saw or did not see, which would have included no blood on the floor, no pockmarks in the walls from bullets that were not fired. I mean, it's stunning with Sandy Hook because some of the most telling evidence can be seen from aerial photographs that day. You have, for example, none of the familiar blue and white signage and painted parking places for handicap parking. That means the school was in legal compliance with Americans for Disability Act. It turns out they would have had to upgrade the school in late 2007 before 2008. And because it was loaded with asbestos and other biohazards, had suffered greatly from hurricane damage, they decided not to do that. So they left the school abandoned, and then it was used for this drill. And it appears that FEMA contracts out to communities to conduct these drills, and they're paid for doing it. And in this instance, the school board was given $50 million to build a new school for Sandy Hook Elementary, which is 7 times the average cost of a kindergarten through 4th grade school across the country, only $7 million. So you have to ask yourself, what in the world why were they given so vastly much more money? What is this going to be? The Taj Mahal of elementary schools? So Wolfgang and I went to speak before the school board. They wouldn't take questions, but they allowed us 3 minutes each, during which I asked, when were the parents attending Sandy Hook notified that their children are going to school in a toxic waste dump? I mean, the whole thing is a total farce. Wolfgang is a very good man. I support him wholeheartedly, and I'm very glad to hear you're going to have him featured on your show.
Yeah, Wolfgang's a good friend of mine. I've been trying to keep up every time he has to go back there for anything. And I know that he filed on February 21st this year. He filed some documents that they had to respond to, and they had to respond within 30 days, and it's to this date not responded to. So he's going back to face them, confront him on that now.
Well, that's good. I mean, Wolfgang, among other points, one of the oddities there were that events that had occurred on the 13th, the day of the rehearsal, were being run together with events on the 14th, the day of the purported shooting, such as the fact that they had a sign that said everyone must check in. They had porta potties already in place. There were boxes of bottled water and pizza carton in the firehouse. There were many people with name tags on lanyards. There were parents bringing children to the scene. Now, think about it. It even states in the manual, which we have, and I put in the book as Appendix A, that everyone must check in. When Wolfgang was pursuing his FOIA hearings, they were able to depose the first selectman of Newtown, a woman by the name of Pat LaLorda. That's a position analogous to mayor of a city. And when she was pressed about the sign, she said that the city had not placed it there. And subsequently, she was asked where it had come from, and she said Homeland Security had put it there, rather revealing and stunning information. Wolfgang was also able to obtain just photograph after photograph after photograph of the school that just demonstrate the dilapidated condition. Now, that's a very spiffy, high-rent neighborhood. Sandy Hook is a very wealthy community. We visited a soccer field, for example, while we were there. It was immaculately manicured. Every blade of grass was in place. So that I say, Wolfgang's been doing good work. The idea of the name tags on lanyards, well, that's standard FEMA practice. They have these color-coded name tags that identify your role, your place in the FEMA hierarchy for conducting the drill. And parents were bringing children to the scene because it wasn't a child shooting massacre. It was a rehearsal, and they were treating it as a festive occasion. So, Wolfgang's done such good work, but there's a mountain of evidence this is a fraud, including, of course, then what you find in the book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, which, as I mentioned, Amazon banned. Kathy, are you there?
Are you muted, Kathy?
Yeah, sorry. Did you ever get that thing off of banning? Is it still banned?
It's still banned on it. What I did was find a new publisher and create my own book company. It's at moonrockbooks.com, where you can find 3 books now, but about to be 3 more. The 3 books that are there are the very first is entitled, and I suppose we didn't go to the moon either, which covers the moon landing, 4 chapters. The death and replacement of Paul McCartney, 4 chapters. Two chapters on the first death of Saddam Hussein, 2 chapters on the second death of Osama bin Laden, and 4 chapters on the Holocaust. Now, the reason that was going to be the second in the series is after we published Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, a natural response might be, and I suppose we didn't go to the moon either. But the fact is we didn't go to the moon. That's another elaborate hoax. So it's all very thematic. Then, of course, the second book we actually got into print, where we'd had problems with a fellow who was typesetting the Sandy Hook book. I just don't think he believed it, and he was very, very, kind of frozen in place. So we took it from him and went ahead and produced the book, but it came out second in the sequence. And then the third is the Boston. Those are the 3 up there now. The 2 more are about to appear there. One is the second edition of Sandy Hook. So we have a Sandy Hook expanded and revised, which includes, for example, 4 chapters about really strange aspects of the community Sandy Hook and about the disappearing witnesses, because many of the witnesses who played key roles here have either died or retired or mysteriously disappeared. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest in the second edition of the Sandy Hook book. The third is one entitled White Rose Blooms in Wisconsin, and it's actually the Moonrock book edition of a book previously published by Mike Palachuk, who actually was the inspiration for the whole series and for the creation of Moonrock Books, where Mike believed that Kevin Barrett and I, who had a radio show for 1.5 years on GNC entitled The Dynamic Duo, where Kevin did Monday and Friday, I did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I was offered a 5-day-a-week show, but I only wanted to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so I offered Kevin Monday and Friday. And Mike published the original edition, which was like the size of a small phone book. I mean, it was abnormally large. And it had, what can I say? I mean, the content was great. He also had, like, I don't know, 60, 90 pages of articles and shows that Kevin and I had done. So Mike was interested in having a Moon Rock edition, which are normal 6x9 size books. So we had to convert it. I found a guy to assist me. We took out this huge block of just endless listings of all the articles and shows that Kevin and I had done, put in a whole bunch of additional photographs and so forth, a Moon Rock book cover, which you'll discover very distinctive. I've got a brilliant guy designing them by the name of Ole Damagard, who actually is himself an expert in the area of assassinations and assassins and related areas. And then there's the new book now that I'm just finishing, which is about 9/11. America nuked on 9/11, compliments of the CIA, the neocons, and the Department of Defense, and the DOD and the Mossad, which I'm certain is going to provoke a lot of controversy, but it's got a tremendous amount of evidential support. There are 8 sections with 3 chapters each. That's 24 chapters substantiating the claims that are implied by the title. And there's the preface and the prologue, and then epilogue and an afterword. So it's really very comprehensive. In fact, I'm going to suggest that 9/11 groups, in order to get their bearing, ought to use this as a target book because it's specific and detailed in its claims. Much of 9/11 discussion gets lost by wandering all over the place, no specificity. So I'm going to propose that what be done with the 9/11 community is to take this as a target book and then seek to define your position in relation to those that are so wonderfully substantiated in this book. There's a quite brilliant journal called Behavioral and Brain Sciences that has pioneered the tradition of having a target article and then inviting contributions from a large number of scholars in related fields. It's been a tremendous success. So what I'm doing is proposing the adoption of that model in order to move forward.
Yeah, you guys have done a lot of work. I heard your interview that you did on, what's the name of that show, with Pat and Pastor Donald.
Oh, yeah. What, Truth versus News? Or it might be Call for Investigation with Patricia?
Call for Investigation.
That's the most recent. You're talking now about Orlando, of course.
Yeah, you were talking about Orlando, and I thought that was really good. But you did one with Scott.
I've done several with Scott, yeah.
On his Call for Investigations. I think it was on there.
No, that's right. That's the most recent. We did that less than a week ago.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then I followed you. I was on the show next. So I managed.
Oh, did you? Oh, fast.
Yeah. So I got to sit and listen to all you guys and add my 2 cents in.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Kathy.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I think that we've done so much work on all of these things. And why is it, Jim, that the elite don't seem to care that we are revealing everything?
Well, because they control the media. They get their message out, and it's endlessly repeated. There are only 6 companies that provide 95% of all the news, and those 6 companies get all their news from Associated Press and Reuters. It turns out that Reuters owns Associated Press, and that Reuters, in turn, is owned by the Rothschilds. So if you only know those facts, you understand a whole lot about why the American media is grossly compromised and has been reduced at this point to simply endlessly parroting stories created by the government. In fact, in the National Defense Appropriation Act of 2013, the Smith-Mutt Act of 1948 was nullified, where it had precluded the use of the same techniques of propaganda and disinformation within the United States that were being used abroad. So now the government can perfectly legally disseminate any false or fabricated story it likes and be perfectly consistent with the law.
Yeah, I saw that when it passed. I just shake my head every day, Jim. They're getting so ridiculous. And I read today where they have passed so many laws that they've averaged it out now. And in the last 3 years, it averages to be 2 new laws every 3 minutes.
2 new laws every 3 minutes?
Every 3 minutes.
That's pretty bizarre. What is Obama going bananas with his executive orders?
Well, I think so.
It's Kathy. They aren't even constitutional. Look what's going on here. You got the head of the executive branch usurping unto himself the authority delegated under the Constitution only to the legislative branch of creating new laws. So all these executive orders are illegal, unconstitutional on their face. Number 2, he makes many of them secret. In an open society, there are no secret laws. The public knows what the law is, so they can conform to it. In tyrannical societies, you can have secret laws that lead to the arrest or prosecution of persons without even knowing what law they have broken. And in the third place, it's completely undemocratic and un-American for the following reason. He's issuing laws that affect the entire nation. But the rationale for democracy that is making decisions that affect everyone should have the right to participate in the making of those decisions. So I've reached a point where I regard Barack Obama as one of the most despotic, tyrannical presidents in the history of the United States. He's violated his oath of office again and again, seeking to subvert the Constitution, especially the Second Amendment. That seems to be an area in which he takes a keen interest. And much of it is involved in using FEMA in order to issue these contracts to different communities to undertake these fake attacks in order to instill fear into the American people and make us more amenable to manipulation in order to support the political agenda of the Obama administration.
Well, and it's that, and then you have to realize that the Congressman, Obama, many of those higher-ups, I call them hierarchies, are owners in the gun companies, and they're owners in the gun factories. So every time that we have a false flag that's involving guns, the next thing they say is we got to take the guns, and the next thing that happens is people go out and buy 5 more.
Well,
they're getting rich
because they're apprehensive that in fact these gun grabs are going to take a greater role. But it turns out the whole thing is generated by hysteria over increased gun violence, when in fact the historical trend has been precisely the opposite. I have looked into this, and from 1993 to 2014, there was a diminution in the rate of death from gun violence by over 50%, from 7 per 100,000 to 3.4. And the drop in injuries that were non-fatal from gun violence dropped by 3/4. So the whole claim that we're in an epidemic of gun violence is unwarranted. It's historically false, and it's being disseminated as more propaganda in order to manipulate the public. I mean, it's pathetic that this is...
Yeah, they are creating all of this. They're getting rich off of us. And then what's happening is we're registering these guns. And when they decide they want to take them, they're just going to come up and take them because they're registered. So I have to tell the people this. Okay, if they come to your door, very nicely hand over your registered guns and make sure you got 5 or 6 more buried somewhere else that are not registered.
Yeah, I know. It's just... But the fact is that, you know, registering guns is a typical prelude to their confiscation and to the...
That's right.
Converting a society into, a nation of slaves. I mean, this is a very common practice. So why anyone should have any doubts about it is beyond me.
Well, that's part of coming out of the matrix. They got to get out of there. And I think maybe this week I'll have a show that shows us how to do that now. I think God finally showed me something today. So... I'm hoping that once that we get that show out and we teach the people really what this matrix is all about, and we wake up a few more, I'm hoping people are going to stand up now.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a nice thought, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think they're going to, because we've been doing things wrong. We've been going after the wrong things. We're going after, we're following them is what we're doing. We're doing exactly what they want us to do, like little mice. And when all these false flags happen, that's all you're going to see in the news, whether it's on YouTube or wherever. That's all you're going to see for days and days. And then that goes away, and then another one comes, and then they make more money on the guns, and it's over and over and over. And we never really get to the bottom of the matrix because they're keeping us spinning around in there.
Yes.
So now I'm going to talk to people. Sometime this week I hope to do this. I just got to learn how to lay it all out, because we got to connect all the dots for everybody to see. And once we've done that, that's it. But I believe that we're very, very close now, Jim, to having everybody come out of the matrix. I think we're very close.
Well, I'll tell you, something that fascinated me about this Orlando thing is how many people were on it immediately. I mean, I was besieged. I got hundreds of emails. All these were appearing online, YouTubes. Really, truly fascinating. So it's just stunning.
And I'm really proud of these YouTubers. They are really doing some good research, some of them. And they're finding answers. But I think we're heading in the wrong direction. We're heading right where they lead us. We got to not look where they lead us. We got to go a different direction.
Yes, yes.
So that's what I'm going to work on that this week. So as far as Orlando, then, what did you guys present the other night?
Oh, there's so much to be said. Look, let me just mention a few highlights right off the bat.
Okay.
The club seems to have lost its license 3 years ago in 2013. So it couldn't even be legally operating as a club. This is analogous to the Sandy Hook Elementary having been closed in 2008. It was an abandoned school. It looks very much as though this was not an operating club. And indeed, if you look at an aerial photograph of the club, just as the aerial photograph of the Sandy Hook School, you see only 11 parking spaces, and none of them are for handicap parking. You don't have the blue and white signage. You don't have the familiar painted blue and white spaces, which suggests, again, that this wasn't a legally operating club because it wasn't compliant with the ADA, just as in the case of the Sandy Hook School. Other parallels include that there was no surge of EMTs into the building at Sandy Hook, no string of ambulances, similar in Orlando, no surge of EMTs into the building, no string of ambulances. We have some absolutely fabricated stories by doctors who claim to have been called in to the Orlando Regional Emergency Center. One guy who said he received a phone call saying they had 20 gunshot victims, he should rush down. And he talks about how he rushed down and passed the polls and saw these emergency vehicles. And he'd never seen so many before in his life, and that it was just after 2 a.m. Well, now Judge Napolitano has revealed that according to the FBI, nobody died before 5:13 a.m. when the SWAT team showed up. So if you believe what we're being told there, and if you think anybody died, which frankly I do not, then they were killed by the SWAT team. And you could certainly run a SWAT team in, but why at 5:13? Would anyone have been there anyway? Do they think that this guy, Mateen, just kept everyone there in place, didn't shoot anyone for 3 hours until the SWAT team showed up? I mean, Kathy, it's ludicrous from beginning to end.
Yes, it is.
In San Bernardino, we were able to discover the Craigslist ad for extras, which said, good pay, transportation, food, some speaking roles. The call date was December 1st to go into action on December 2nd. This is why you had so many people milling around who didn't have any idea what they were doing. I actually came into contact with a highly qualified paramedic, and he and I went through both of the procedures that were used at Sandy Hook and the procedures that were followed in San Bernardino, and they were all grossly violative of what should have happened had these events been real. You can find it online at The Real Deal, Staging Attacks from Sandy Hook to San Bernardino. I mean, it's ridiculous. Once again, as in San Bernardino, they allowed reporters to rummage through the home of the alleged shooters, and that was something that was also done in Orlando. They allowed reporters to go into the home of this guy Mateen and rummage around, which destroys any forensic significance it might possess. Get this: there's when the FBI released its consolidated crime statistics for 2012. If you looked up for Newtown in the intersection with murders or non-negligent homicides, you find the number 0. There's a Crime Stop, Crime Watch website that is reflective, very reliable, and it shows no deaths from homicide in Orlando for what is supposed to be the greatest mass murder in U.S. history.
Unreal. I don't know. I've been saying for a long time, we're not living in any reality. Anything outside of my house here is not real. The reality's in here with Jesus, and that's it.
Yeah, well, it's stunning.
Yeah, everything is just faked, and
there's something else. You're going to love this. A fellow by the name of Scott Alexander, who's been a police officer for 24 years, a detective for 15, who has an extensive background in music, musical composition. I mean, actual degrees. He has 3 or 4 degrees. He's a musician himself. He knows about production of musical events. He discovered that there were prominent musicians such as Christina Aguilera and Melissa Etheridge, who had produced songs about Orlando within 3 days of the event. And when you read through the lyrics, you see how carefully they are tailored to the Orlando event. Now, his observation, and you can find this in 2 blogs, because he published a supplemental. It's entitled the Orlando fake shooting, the musical, and the Orlando fake shooting, the musical part 2. He also noticed that they got together over 100 Broadway stars within 4 days to sing, to what the world needs now for Orlando. Now, his point is these people don't do anything unless they're paid to do it, that they appear to have been induced to do it because they were promised, number 1, no one would be killed. Number 2, it would promote sympathy for the lesbian gay community. Number 3, it would lend weight to the gun control agenda. And number 4, it would be useful to benefit Hillary Clinton. So it appears this was all elaborate. I draw a parallel with Rudy Giuliani after 9/11. He lined up 115 dump trucks to start hauling away the debris from the World Trade Center. Well, that's simply outrageous. How could he have possibly done such a thing? He couldn't. In New York, normally it would take a month to line up 1 dump truck, and he had 115. This all had to be pre-planned, advanced knowledge, carefully choreographed, and even orchestrated in the case of the musical.
Absolutely. And I do believe in that particular event in Boston, those 2 young men were killed eventually.
Well, no, Zucker was convicted and sentenced, but he's still, he hasn't been put to death. But it was a show trial, Kathy. It was completely fraudulent. I mean, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, even the judge had to know it was fake. I mean, when you've got the police department calling out, this is a drill, this is a drill. When you got the Boston Globe tweeting that a demonstration bomb is going to be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities, and a second tweet that one is going to be set off in front of the library, and 1 minute later, one of these goes off in front of the Boston Public Library, and they're puff pieces. There's noise, there's smoke, but it's not real. I mean, I may have already observed that as a former artillery officer in the Marine Corps, I can assure you there was nothing there strong enough to kill anyone. They use amputee actors of all things. Who would think of that? Well, there's an outfit called I think Actors in Hollywood, where they provide all kinds of actors for all kinds of crisis events. And in the case of this particular one in Orlando, it appears that what they did was to contract it out to this company G4S, which turns out to be a huge outfit.
Yeah.
It has some 610,000 employees, Kathy. They provide security for federal facilities, and they have, as a subcomponent of their own, Crisis Cast, which is a British company that, in its own words, provides award-winning role-play actors and filmmakers specifically trained in disaster and crisis management. The shooter, Omar Mateen, was a full-time employee of G4S. He had 2 licenses to carry, one a concealed carry permit, another because he was a security guard. There's no way any laws would have precluded his obtaining those weapons, but the whole thing is staged. Nobody appears to have died at all.
But I wasn't talking about Orlando, Jim. I was talking about Boston.
But
I do believe the one that was shot there.
Kathy, the older brother died from being run over by an SUV, which appears to be his own vehicle. And while they tried to blame that on Zoker, the younger brother, Tamerlan was in police custody when he died. They took him into arrest with much fanfare. It was all on TV. They stripped him naked, put him in a police car. I could identify him, but how much better that his mother and his aunt identified him. And he died after he was taken into police custody. Americans are so naive, Kathy, they can't even put 2 and 2 together, that if first Tamerlan was taken into police custody and then he died by being run over what appears to have been 3 times by the police in an SUV, where we have a witness reporting exactly that. She observed the police driving over him 3 times in an SUV. Zoker can't have done it. But Zoker was convicted in a show trial for which there was no justification. It was completely fabricated. Let me give you an illustration of how much they faked it, because I published articles on all of this. They claim he wrote a confession on the inside of a boat while he was seeking to flee from the police who were, conducting a dragnet to capture him. And they fired hundreds of rounds at him while he was in the boat, but he miraculously survived. So they produced this confession. It's all perfectly straight lines that are uniformly spaced, and it was written on the curved surface of the inside of a fiberglass boat. Kathy, it requires a special implement to write on fiberglass. Are we to imagine that Zoker was carrying one of these special implements to write on fiberglass when he was eluding the police? Even Leonardo da Vinci was famous for his backward writing, and his talent could not have performed the feat attributed to Zoker Serenova.
I don't know why it's sticking in my mind, but when he was in the boat and the owner of the house knew he was in the boat, didn't he know that by blood that he saw coming out the side of the boat?
Oh, blood coming out of the side of the boat. Well, he might have had some minor injury, but he wasn't killed there. I mean, he was put on trial, right? He had a woman named Judy Clark who takes a lot of high-profile cases and manages to throw them. She had officially, lodged him as not guilty, but in her opening statement, she said they did it, leaving nothing for the jury to decide or evaluate in relation to the evidence, because she is giving it away. She's just telling him, go ahead and convict him. I mean, it's all ludicrous. I can't believe how bad it was. In fact, I spent about half of the book explaining the fake trial, the phony framing of Zoker, and how much the public has been resistant, where some communities have gone out of their way to just try to keep me from speaking about Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, 9/11, and so forth. It's unreal.
Yeah, I was saying to a friend of mine this morning, it's like you get up in the morning and you've got everything bombarding you from every side now. You don't know which way really to pay attention to. Therefore, I choose not to pay attention to any of it, but to get to the bottom of the matrix and find out really what's going on here. Because this is my theory, of course, but I believe that when they have all of this confusion going on around us and they're creating all this chaos, it is to keep our eyes off of the real thing that they're hiding. So I'm going to find out what it is.
And what are you thinking is the real thing they're hiding when you say that?
Well, it gets really complicated, and that's why I said I have to figure out how to lay it out. And I might even get you and my other friend on the phone one day, and let's see if we can lay this out and connect every dot. And I know that when we do this, the people are going to go, oh my God, and they're going to pop right out of the matrix.
Well, that would be my great pleasure, Kathy.
Yeah, so I'll my friend is listening right now, so I know he hears what I'm saying, and yeah, because with your experience of how to connect it all, we can present it right. And it's really important to present it right, because I want everybody to swallow that blue pill and come out of that matrix now.
Yes.
So
well, we're in such an information manipulated society. I mean,
it
Alex
is.
Jones had the right idea when he called his Operation InfoWars. That's exactly what's happening. There's some questions about exactly where Alex really stands on some of these issues. For example, he's been completely unwilling to accept that Israel was involved in 9/11. But the fact is, the whole plot appears to have originated in the fertile imagination of Bibi Netanyahu, who actually organized a conference in Jerusalem and published a book entitled Terrorism, How the West Can Win, already in 1987, 3 years before the demise of the Soviet Union in 1990-91, and well before anyone ever had the concept of terrorism in mind. The neocons in the Project for a New American Century, which was a think tank promoting the idea that if the United States would only move aggressively into the Middle East, it could exert military and diplomatic pressure outward from that geopolitically sensitive region and be able to create a new American empire that would endure for the next 100 years. But they bemoaned that the American public might be slow to appreciate the opportunity thereby provided, unless there were some catalytic and traumatizing event such as a new Pearl Harbor, which they went about arranging. Indeed, the theft of the election in Florida in 2000 to guarantee that Bush and Cheney got into office so they could bring about this traumatic new event, transform American foreign policy from one in which, at least officially, we never attacked any country that had not attacked us first, to one in which we became the foremost aggressor nation, adopting a program to take out the governments of 7 countries in the next 5 years, which Wesley Clark would eventually reveal, about which he had learned when he returned from serving as Supreme Commander Allied Forces Europe, which means Commanding General of NATO, to the Pentagon. And he had a preliminary conversation with a general there who said we were going to invade Iraq. And Wesley Clark said, why? They had nothing to do with 9/11. And the general said, I don't know. And then the next time he visited with the general about a month later, Clark asked, are we still going to attack Iraq? And the general said, oh, it's much worse, sir. Please come into my office.
Yeah.
And he started telling him about this plan. He just got a memo from Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, about taking out 7 countries in the next 5 years, beginning with Iraq and Libya, ending with Syria and Iran. And Kathy, it's a good thing that Russia has intervened in Syria, because now we have Hillary's emails that are being declassified, and it shows there that getting rid of Saddam had nothing to do with his abusing the Syrian people, but rather it was to increase or enhance the security of Israel. In fact, all of this was to benefit Israel, take out the modern Arab state that served as a counterbalance to Israel's domination of the Middle East, and where, when the gas attack that was attributed to the Assad government, but actually shown by Russia with a 50-page dossier it presented to the United Nations, had been done by the rebels, where other emails suggest that Hillary was involved in transmitting this chemical weapon from Libya to the Syrian rebels, though other accounts have it done by Prince Bandar, also known as Bandar Bush, who was one of the leaders of Saudi Arabia, because he was so tight with the Bush family. Either way, it came from the rebel side. And when Obama wanted to go ahead and lob cruise missiles into Syria, the American people opposed it almost as one. They were overwhelmed with complaints about another war in the Middle East, so they had to fall back on Plan B, which was to create this force now known as ISIS, where Judicial Watch was able to, under Freedom of Information Act requests, obtain the documents from the Defense Intelligence Agency that created ISIS. I have published and lectured about it, including an article entitled How We Know ISIS Was Made in the USA, which was published in Iran Review. No American newspaper would carry it, of course. But also I participated in the Left Forum less than 2 months ago, where I presented, with all the slides and documentation showing how the Iraqi army had shot down 2 UK cargo planes that were providing supplies to ISIS, how the Iraqi Popular Forces had shot down an American helicopter doing the same, how we have photographs of ISIS members sporting U.S. Army tattoos, how the files of an aide to Senator John McCain were hacked, and they obtained video showing the taping of the phony beheading videos on a soundstage in Tel Aviv or even Hollywood. I mean, it's all completely disgusting. This is a U.S. op. And that's why Obama has been so lackluster, so unwilling to attack ISIS. He created ISIS. So believe it or not, Kathy, he's even instructed the military that before they can take out one of these ISIS convoys, they must drop pamphlets notifying them they're going to be attacked, then conduct strafing runs before they actually start taking out the convoys. Compare that with the Russians. Between April 1st and April 4th, the Russians conducted 900 attacks on ISIS targets in that brief interval of time.
I like the last one they did the best that they reported on, where the U.S. sent our planes in there in the night, and our F-18s, and telling them to get out of there after they bombed a part of a place over there where the ISIS was. And then they realized, the Russians are smart, they realized that we had to go reload for our fuel on those F-18s. They had to go out to sea, to the boat, to get reloaded. And so they waited until they went out there, and they went back in and they bombed the rest.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. Very good. The Russians know what they're doing. The U.S. does not. Vladimir Putin revealed that 40 different countries were supporting ISIS, the principal being the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Israel's been providing medical care for injured ISIS fighters. I mean, it's all completely disgusting beyond words. And much of it appears to be that oil was discovered in the Golan Heights. Plus, the Israelis want to build a pipeline through Syria so they can provide oil to Europe and circumvent Russia, which has been doing the same in the past. I mean, it's all got to do with the bottom line with oil and making money. It's really a disgrace.
Yeah, that natural gas line is a big deal now. There is one correction I would hope you'll take nicely.
Sure. Go ahead, Kathy.
When I am talking about Israel now, I learn to make the distinction. Because those Zionists in Israel don't do anything to benefit their own country either. They do everything to benefit themselves and the Zionists around the world. And all of Israel is not Zionists.
Sure.
Okay,
in fact, there are many Jews who are not Zionists, and there are many Zionists who are not Jews. There are a lot of evangelical Christians who are Zionists, because they believe there's going to be an apocalypse in the Middle East and Christ is going to return and initiate a kingdom of God on earth. So, but you're absolutely correct. But I'm talking about the Israeli government, criticizing the Israeli government, which is pushing all these plans, especially Bibi Netanyahu, who is, of course, very controversial even in Israel himself.
Yeah, he is. And most Israelis don't like him. They want him gone. So,
yeah, I hope that comes to pass, because he's been a very powerful negative influence. I mean, really, he was responsible more for 9/11 than any other person.
Yeah. I see he is calling out for all Israelis to come back home now. And that's part of Bible prophecy that's prophesied in there. And then he's getting them home, and he's building all these little little tiny spaces for them to live in. Some will be able to. Most are in the street, which I have some missionaries down there that they always really believed in him until they got down there and they see exactly what he's all about. And he's put most of the people that are coming home, especially the old people, in the
Yeah.
street. They have no
Yeah.
place to live. They have no food. And the money that we are sending over there, which, by the way, this church over in Texas there, what's that guy's name? Corpus Christi he's in, I think. And I can't think of his name, but he sends on an average of $17 million a week from his church to them people.
$17 million a week?
17.
Where could he get such sums of money? That's a
He's
staggering
got a
amount of money.
church. Yeah, he's got a church of over 3,000.
Yeah, well, you couldn't get 17 million a week at that rate. You couldn't get 17 million from 3,000
Well, but
in
he
a lot
puts
of
out-
weeks. So,
He puts out everything to every church in the United States. He collects from every church in the United States, plus not only is it the 17 million, they are also buying tickets for those Israelis who want to go home. So they've been sending them back there into this filth, usually sending them from the Russia area, Ukraine and down in there, where they're going home. They don't speak the language. They don't understand where they're at. They have no place to live. They have no family left alive. They're just left there alone. But they've identified them, haven't they?
well, it's fairly stunning. I suspect the sum has to be less than the amount you've specified.
Well, that's what they're
but-
saying in his book. His book is saying 17 million a week.
There are 52 weeks in a year. 17 million times 52 is what? $1 trillion?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me pull up. Let me
They're
pull up a
dealing in
calculator.
trillions. If I could just think, John Hagee, that's his name. John Hagee. And he could be lying about it, but that's what's in his book.
Well, it would be 8,840,000,000. Let me see if I read it right with the decimal points here. 100,000. That would be $884 million a year, Kathy.
Jeez.
That's nearly $1 trillion. I think that's preposterous.
Well, maybe it was 17 million a month. How's that come out?
17 million a month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's what it was. But I remember reporting it at the time that he brought that book out, and it said 17 million a week.
Okay, so here we're talking about a month, and there are only 12 months, of course. So let me see. I had to put the numbers in. Okay, times 1, 2 equals. That would be $204 million a year. 204 million. That's still a staggering sum, Kathy.
Yeah,
But,
it
you know,
is.
Okay, let's just say he's saving them a whole lot of money.
Yeah, he is. He is. And sending those poor people down there. And then here's what happens. They get there. They get no home. They're living in the street. They're going hungry. Now comes along their people from the Zionist group taking pictures and being all this very, very compassionate man comes on TV. Almost in tears because these old people are crying and they're cold and they're shaken and blah, blah. They're using that to make more money. And then you think about all the money that the United States gives those Zionists over there. Every year, I think, what's his name? Obama just gave them some more. I don't remember how much it is, but he gave them more.
Well,
So that's a lot.
That's completely unreal, really, truly.
So what we're doing is we're paying for our own demise.
Well, that's what they're doing with all these ops they're conducting against us. The taxpayers are paying for this. FEMA is using American taxpayer dollars to
Yep,
stage these attacks all over the country. Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, San Bernardino, Orlando, at taxpayer expense. And
that's
they're
right.
all intended to promote confiscating our right under the Second Amendment. I find it completely outrageous.
I know. It's absolutely insane. And that's what we're being run by. Total insanity. I don't know if we'll ever get back to sanity again. I am hoping so, but I don't know.
Well, I don't see much prospect in the near term unless we do the right thing and elect Donald Trump president, because Hillary's going to be more of the same. A vote for Hillary is a vote for more wars, for more death, more devastation. She's going to come out for the TPP. In fact, I have the report that it's already included as a part of the Democratic platform, support for the TPP. That has to really tick off Bernie Sanders. Because he's campaigned so seriously, so strenuously against the TPP, against NAFTA. NAFTA was introduced by Bill Clinton, and NAFTA has led to the gutting of our industrial and manufacturing base, the loss of millions and millions of jobs. Bill Clinton also weakened up regulations on Wall Street that led to the bubble that burst, the derivatives bubble that burst in 2008. We have Bill Clinton to thank more than any other party. And so now Hillary is telling us she's going to put Bill in charge of the economy because he's done such a great job in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, this is loopy, Kathy. Loopy.
Yeah. But I think we have to be careful with Trump as well. We have to remember, always keeping in the back of our mind, this is a game they're playing. Therefore, they have both sides loaded.
Kathy, honest to God, I tell you, I've heard that argument before. So what are you going to do? Not vote for anyone?
Exactly. That is what I'm going to do.
Well,
because we can no longer vote for the lesser of two evils, because evil is evil. There is no lesser.
But there are always more and less qualified candidates, Kathy. You just got to make your judgment about which one you think would do the best job. I admit that Trump is a flawed candidate, but I gladly would vote for Trump over Hillary Clinton. She even has a list of murders and crimes in her wake, she and Bill. It's absolutely appalling. Mike Rivero recently put out a list that had over 50 names of people who had died in the wake of Clinton's malfeasance. And that includes some fairly familiar names, such as Vince Foster. I mean, it's very, very disturbing.
Boy, speaking of Vince Foster, do you know a woman by the name of Nancy Ruth Owens?
Not off the top of my head. Tell me about her.
Well, she has made confession. I don't know if she's in jail at this time or going to be placed in there at any time, but she claims to have been in the room with Hillary when Hillary told her to kill Vince Foster.
Really?
She talks about how she killed Vince Foster, and then she talks about Larry Nichols being in the room at the time.
Yeah.
And Larry removed the body.
And it was Larry who removed the body?
That's what she said.
Well, listen, here's what gives this story plausibility. Hillary put pressure on Vince Foster and Webster Hubbell, Hubbell was in the Department of Justice and Vince was a special advisor, to conduct the Waco fiasco and burn all those people to death because Hillary felt the focus on Waco was distracting from her healthcare agenda. So she very callously put pressure to have this done. My understanding is a couple of days later, Vince Foster was writing up a report about what had actually happened, how it had come to pass that the Waco disaster took place, and that Hillary was so infuriated that she had him killed. That's the story as I get it. Now tell me what this woman said about killing Vince Foster.
Oh, you got to look her up on YouTube and get all of her testimony, because it's so horrifying. I can't even get it in my mind to say it. But she claims that when she was brought in there, Vince Foster was there. And there was a man that was hanging from a chain by one leg upside down. And she was invited there in the first place for some kind of dinner. And so she goes because she's part of the cartel. She's been working with them for a long, long time. She goes, and Hillary tells her to kill Foster. She explains how she kills Foster. And then she explains how they cut up the body of the man hanging upside down, and they cooked it for dinner.
Oh, God, you're kidding me.
Yeah, and you get to, she said you got to pick the place you wanted to eat. She picked the calf of the leg.
Oh, Kathy, this is so disgusting.
Well, I'm telling you, got to.
I'm not saying it's not true, by the way. I'm not implying it's not true. It may very well be.
I don't know. I don't know if it is, because when I got all done listening to, and I listened to several of her testimonies beginning in 2011, I think it was, and then she came forward with all the different things. She claims to have killed Che by order of the Clintons.
Remind me, Che.
The Chi or whatever they called him. He's that Cuban hero everybody has.
You're not talking about Che Guevara.
Che Guevara, yeah.
Well, he died in Bolivia. The Bolivian soldiers had tracked him down. He was actually killed by a very famous hitman. Let's see. Who was actually involved in the death of JFK and the death of Bobby. He was known as El Indio, or the Indian, David Sanchez Morales, who not only killed Che Guevara, but actually cut off his head and kicked it 100 feet away so there'd be no doubts about whether or not he was dead.
She claims that she killed him by shooting him in the groin.
I don't know. Does she claim she did this in Bolivia?
I don't remember if she said it was in another country.
That's where he died. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember. But you got to get pull up those YouTubes, because it's.
This woman sounds like a rather brutal person, Kathy.
Yes. And the whole thing was her brother was working for the cartel too. And when I'm speaking of cartel, I'm the Clinton cartel. And so he disappeared. And she went to look for him.
Her brother disappeared.
Yeah. She says she went to look for him, and that's how she ends up in all of these different situations while looking for him. She finally does find him. She recovers him. She don't say if he's dead or alive. She recovered him, she said. And at first, when I see her, the very
what became of him? How did she find him? Where did she find him?
She didn't say. She just said she recovered him.
All right.
At first, when she does her first interview that I saw, she's wearing prison orange, and so I'm thinking she's in prison. But then I go back to 2011, and I start listening to all those, and she's not in prison. So I don't know what to think, but definitely I wanted to talk to Larry. I actually did call Larry and left him a message today to see what he says, because something ain't right here. But if she is telling the truth about Hillary Clinton needs to be hanging from a highest tree for the stuff she has done.
I agree, and the American people are so taken in; they're so enamored of Hillary.
Yep.
One of the fascinating features, by the way, of Roger Stone's book, The Clintons' War on Women, is not just how Hillary was abusive and facilitated Bill's sexual harassment and rapes of other women. I mean, he was actually kicked out of Oxford for raping a fellow student. But that Chelsea is not Bill's daughter, but rather the daughter of Webster Hubbell. When Hillary first went to work for the Rose Law Firm, she was Hubbell was the boss, and she was his personal assistant.
Right.
And when Hubble was indicted for making billings of clients for work he had not performed, about which he had to have knowledge as his personal assistant, he pled guilty to avoid a trial that might have led to the production of evidence that could have entangled her, so that when he was on his way to prison, the Clintons gave him a retainer of $500,000 to be their counsel. And of course, it meant that lawyer-client confidentiality would preclude him talking about their relationship. But in one of in the first photographs that are in the book, you see a photograph of Chelsea next to Webster, and it's unmistakable that she is his daughter, where the Clintons have undertaken a series of modest cosmetic surgeries to lessen the striking resemblance between Chelsea and her real father.
Isn't it amazing? The lengths that they will go to cover up truth is just unending. It's unending. And the evilness that these people think of, no regular man, no regular person could think of these evil things. They're always way, way ahead of us in their thoughts. It's terrible.
Well, they have the advantage of surprise, and that they can largely or very often control the flow of information. Just, today, as Ari remarked, it's only 6 corporations that determine all the news that we see on the mass media. And those 6 get all their news from AP and Reuters. And Reuters owns the AP and the Rothschilds own Reuters.
Look at here. I just opened up an article on John Hagee Ministries. It says John Hagee Ministries raised over $6 million on Sunday to benefit Jewish charities.
Over $6 million on a single day?
On a single day.
Well, Kathy, maybe you're right with these fantastic sums of money.
I bet maybe I should have stayed a pastor.
Bizarre.
It is. Now, why would people send that much money to a place that they know nothing about without first sending someone over there to get the truth?
Yeah.
Because that money that is being sent from Hagee is in cahoots with Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And so he's over there regularly meeting with Netanyahu. That money is not going to those people. That money is going to the government, the Zionists.
Yeah. Well, I certainly believe that. Yeah, I don't doubt it at all.
This just makes me sick. Just in one day, raises $6 million.
I told you about Scott Alexander, the 24-year policeman, 15-year detective who discovered that these prominent musicians had been tipped off in advance about what was going on and contracted to make musical performances, including Christina Aguilera and others, and that they had lyrics that were just tailor-made to Orlando, and they had these productions, Melissa Etheridge being another, very sophisticated productions that were out within 3 days, and he explained how it would be impossible to do this without advanced knowledge. And then within 4 days, 100 members of Broadway, famous people on Broadway who don't do anything without being paid for it, came together to sing a special version of What the World Needs Now for Orlando, whereas it would be a logistic nightmare getting these people all together in the same place at one time if it hadn't been done well in advance.
I'll tell you. Sometimes I don't know what to think of this world. Mike, are you with us?
Yeah, my pulse is still here.
Okay.
I haven't been.
Do you want to announce the phone number for people that want to call in?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say I haven't shot myself 14 times with a nail gun, so it's all done. Alrighty, folks. The number to
I feel like I have.
the number is area code 605-562-3140, and the participant code is 529582, and it's up on the screen there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if any of you in the chat room have questions, feel free to call in as well.
Do you know that in California, 15% of the votes were flipped for Hillary to avoid Bernie winning a landslide in California?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think that's going to tick off Bernie voters as this knowledge becomes more widely known. I mean, how could they support a woman? They were stealing elections from Bernie time and time again. I mean, I've reported on it over and over again. I mean, you had one state after another, where the exit poll favored Bernie. And I'm talking about Illinois, I'm talking about Ohio, I'm talking about Missouri. The exit polls are normally our most reliable indicator of who won or lost an election. In fact, in Europe, they use the exit polling to determine the winner and the tabulated vote to simply confirm it. But in the United States, they use the tabulated vote, and if there's a discrepancy with the exit vote, they adjust the exit vote to conform to the tabulated vote on the ground that the exit vote must have been wrong. I mean, this is completely ludicrous.
Well, it's all part of manipulating the masses, the slaves.
And Kentucky was stolen too. They did that by manipulating Pike County, which is a big coal county. I lived in Kentucky for about 10 years, and they would have gone heavily for Bernie because of Hillary talking about putting the miners out of business, and so they just wiped all the votes off of Pike County, and then started up again, so that Bernie lost a staggering number of votes and gave the state to Hillary. And right here in Wisconsin, Kathy, you'll love this. I was in the studio of a local talk show host at 9 a.m. on the morning of the election here, which was the 5th of April, explaining how it had been rigged, how they were going to put Cruz ahead of Trump, how they were going to diminish the Sanders lead so that Hillary wouldn't be embarrassed again, and put really a twit on the Supreme Court. And all three happened just as I predicted. And I saw it coming because there was a phony poll that came out of the Marquette School of Law that showed a 20-point change in support, where Trump had been leading all along by at least 10 points. Now suddenly he was trailing by 10 points. That was a 20-point shift. That not only doesn't happen absent something like a nuclear explosion, but especially not with Trump voters who are paying no attention to anyone else. They're going ahead and doggedly staying with their preferred candidate. And I even found another website which had massively more participants than this Marquette School poll, which had less than 1,000. I found a website, I Stand With, where the 8 districts in Wisconsin, they had an average of 1,000 in each of the 8. So they had more than 8 times the number of participants in the poll. And Trump was leading in every one of those districts, typically by like 62 to 37.
Well, I know he was leading everywhere that he went. And I knew she was manipulating everything. And then she turned and she got Bernie Sanders to say he would do whatever to make sure that Trump didn't become president. Why is that?
Look, Bernie's a good guy, but he's not really super smart. He's unsophisticated. He doesn't understand the role of dirty tricks. He doesn't understand voting theft, though I think he paused after California, and that's why he flew home to ponder the situation, because he knew he'd been gypped, and now the evidence is coming out. That was stolen from him big time. I mean, big time. So I don't know why Bernie, he gave her a pass on the emails, too. This email scandal is enormous. Do you know that Hillary didn't even have a password on her email when she was Secretary of State? That she was transmitting highly classified information like the names of covert CIA agents over this insecure server? That she was violating all the Department of State guidelines where she knew better? Well, I was stupefied when William Weld, who's the vice presidential pick on the Libertarian candidate, on the Libertarian Party ticket, and who has a background in the law, said he thought there was nothing to it because it required criminal intent, and he didn't see any criminal intent on Hillary's part. But it doesn't involve criminal intent. It's a function of the content of the data being transmitted. It doesn't even have to be formally classified or stamped top secret, secret, or classified. But we have further evidence of intent on her part if it were necessary, because she had, with one of her correspondents, instructed him to snowpack out the word secret and then send it again, not on a government server, so she could have it. I mean, she has done all this duplicitous stuff, and it turns out that in the West Wing, there were 1 million emails in 1999 that had been subpoenaed that mysteriously disappeared because of a computer glitch. Now ask yourself, how do you lose 1 million emails? And these were emails, Kathy, that had been subject to subpoena.
Yeah, I'd also like to see the emails that were in exchange between Obama and her. Obama knew about this the whole time, and they know that now. And this last set of emails that was set free, it shows in there that they were communicating with each other on those emails. So he was complicit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. He's a dirty deal. He appears to come out of a CIA family. You know, Trump has been trashed so much for the birther issue, but based upon my own research, Obama was born in Kenya. They were so sensitive to this that they created a fake Kenyan birth certificate. So if you start talking about the Kenyan birth certificate, they say, oh yeah, well that one was discovered to be fake. Well, there are 2 of them. And one of them is an obvious fake because it has the wrong name for Kenya at the time. It has officials that weren't in office at the time. An obvious fabrication. The other, however, is completely authentic, even has a footprint of the freshborn baby. I had an expert on my show, The Real Deal, when it was straight audio show, because since January of 2015, it's gone video. But I had 880 shows that were straight radio. And I had an expert on it. We went through a discussion of the Hawaiian birth certificate, and there was just proof after proof after proof that it was a fake. Obama grew up in Indonesia. He came to the United States on fellowships that were only available to foreign students, which is why when you have the first black president of the United States, his first act in office is to seal his educational records just when every little kid in the country wanted to study his background in history.
I'm just remembering right now, this Nancy Ruth Owens claims to be Obama's half-sister.
An Obama half-sister?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Not the one who committed the murder.
Yes.
You're kidding me.
No.
So is she a black woman?
She's partly, yes.
You know this whole Benghazi thing? People, the headlines say there's nothing here to implicate Hillary, but there are monster issues here.
Oh my goodness.
One, Kathy, is this. No one knows who ordered no assistance to be sent to the people in Benghazi. No one knows who ordered no assistance to be sent. Well, there aren't a lot of possibilities as to who that might be. Second, the general who was in the position to send assistance was told they'd been evacuated, so he sent his people to Tripoli instead of to Benghazi. In addition, the Obama administration stonewalled requests about whether or not there'd been any transactions of giving arms to the rebels involved here. And they wouldn't admit or deny anything about it, which tells you it involved giving the rebels weapons. My impression, this is what I pieced together from my research on this, Chris Stevens was opposed to the transmission of these weapons because they included shoulder-mounted surface-to-air missiles that can be used to bring down civilian airliners, that Hillary was outraged that he was opposing her plan to get these weapons into the hands of the rebels, and she deliberately let them be sacrificed. She would, of course, later lie about it and claim the whole thing had been caused by that ridiculous trailer, Innocence of Muslims, that lampooned the Prophet Muhammad. But it appears that it was all a Hillary scheme from beginning to end, and everyone's just keeping their mouths shut.
I don't doubt that one bit. People are scared to death of her in that government.
Well,
They see what he does.
It just might have something to do with the string of bodies that are left behind.
Yeah.
These are very nasty people.
I'm just hearing from Larry Nichols right now, and he's going to come on our show.
Oh, super. I've interviewed him myself.
Yeah, he's been so sick I haven't wanted to push him too much.
Was he going to come on right now with us?
No.
Okay.
He's just writing to me, asking me for particulars.
Okay, terrific.
And so then I'm going to find out about this. I'm going to ask him right now. Do you know Nancy Ruth Owens?
Make sure he brings the documents.
Yeah, that's a private joke, Jim. We have here. Bring the documents.
I got it. Do you know that Donald Trump and Hillary are already back in nearly a dead heat, 42-40?
Really?
You know that Donald Trump and Hillary are cousins?
No.
Yes, sir.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's a relationship I wouldn't want to acknowledge.
Hey, Jim.
He hasn't, has he?
What's your thought on the Brexit?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the Brexit is going to be a big plus for Donald Trump because it shows that here you have the people of the United Kingdom are concerned about their borders. They're worried about immigration. The way the European Union is set up, anyone who comes into any one of the countries can travel to any of the others without having to pass through any security or filter system whatsoever. They want to regain control of their own country and their own destiny. All that is a big plus for Donald Trump. I also believe the bombing, 3 suicide bombers reinforce, the issue of terrorism. So that's back on the front burner, and where Donald has consistently been evaluated as stronger in dealing with terrorism than Hillary Clinton. And I would think when you start putting these things together that it accounts for why the Donald is back and neck with Hillary, even after going through this very bad period where it seemed as though he could do nothing right and she could do nothing wrong. But what I say is this: after Hillary piling on for this last couple of weeks, that the Donald is caught up with her again is very bad news for Hillary, because she can't use the argument she's been using again. I mean, they become stale. And the fact is that the Donald has so much more evidence on Hillary, it's just unbelievable. So, I look forward to a summer where the Donald is going to make increasing gains. You're going to love this one, Kathy. Hillary received a secret memo in her email stating the Obama administration's support for ISIS.
Wow.
I mean, wait till the American people figure out that ISIS was made in the USA, as I've been explaining, and that Hillary knew it. And now she's claiming, she's going to cope with ISIS? I mean, she's going to be an extension of the Obama administration, which was an extension of the Bush-Cheney administration. So we're going to get more wars. We're going to have more free trade. We're going to have more suppression of the quality of life of American working men and women. I mean, it's a disgrace.
Yeah, I'm just trying to write to him and to you, and I'm not
That's
good at
all right,
that.
Kathy.
Go ahead, Mike. Help him out.
Here's another good one, Kathy. Would you believe 20 years ago in 1996, Bill Clinton said and signed an executive order to deny federal contracts to businesses that hired illegal immigrants, and he was talking about deporting them. So why was it okay for Bill Clinton to talk that way in 1996, but not for the Donald today, when even John Brennan, who's the head of the CIA and is himself a Muslim, has acknowledged that ISIS is using these refugee streams to move its people around? And that, of course, would include into the USA.
Wow.
So do you think Trump will actually get it, or do you think,
I think he's got a great shot at getting it. I think Hillary, there's a good chance she'll actually be indicted, although Loretta Lynch seems to be a close personal friend of hers. And it turns out that when Loretta was at Harvard, she formed a black sorority which had one other member, And the one other member is married to Eric Holder, who was the attorney general who arranged the Sandy Hook event. He even traveled to Connecticut to consult with the governor to let him know that they were going to have take an abandoned school, conduct a drill, and present it as a live event to promote gun control. I think the Donald has an excellent chance of winning this, and that as the people come to understand that Hillary is a hawk and a neocon, and there are many in the Obama administration. You got Victoria Nuland in the Department of State. You got Samantha Powers at the United Nations. You got Ash Carter in the Department of Defense. You got Susan Rice as his national security advisor. This means Barack Obama himself is a neocon, which means he's all for all these wars in the Middle East, taking out these Arab countries to benefit Israel. That's their agenda. And Hillary is one of them. So Paul Craig Roberts, who is our leading public intellectual, recently wrote, "A vote for Hillary is a vote for war."
Yeah, but now if Trump does what I heard today, I don't even know if it's true because I haven't had a chance to check it out, but I heard that Trump is the one who is behind bringing in all of the military movement over on the East Coast, and that he is going to start having the illegals removed. Is that true?
Well, he's talked about deporting illegals.
But he doesn't have the power to do that.
Well, not now. No, of course. Only after he becomes president. He couldn't do anything about it now. But I mean, the point I was making is Bill Clinton was talking about doing that in 1996, and nobody raised an eyebrow.
Well, we didn't have so many then.
Of course we did not have so many then.
No.
You're absolutely right. Get this. Jerry Brown, a couple of months ago, signed a motor voter law, so anyone who signs up for a driver's license is automatically registered to vote. And that sounds like a great plan, but it turns out in California, illegal aliens, mostly Mexicans, these agricultural workers, are entitled to get a driver's license, which means he's also enabled them to vote. And gee, I wonder who you think they're going to support.
I don't know.
That's
we need
Jerry
somebody
Brown.
like Nigel Farage. Farage. We need someone like Nigel Farage.
Well,
I listened to his speech this morning, and I stood up out of my chair and clapped all by myself.
Tell me about Nigel. He's an unknown quantity to me.
Yeah, but he's kind of like Trump. He came up out of nowhere. They told him, they laughed at him for the last 2 years when he said he was going to take the people out of the EU. And now today he stands up in the parliament and he says...
Right. He's in the UK in Parliament. Yeah.
He says to all of them, well, who's laughing now?
I know.
He said, and we're willing to work with all of you. We will work with all of you if you treat us with the respect that we're due. And then he got in trouble with the other guy because he was smarting off to everybody. He told him that none of them, in all the years he's been a part of the parliament, none of them have done anything for anybody. They don't know how to work.
They aren't solving any of the people's problems.
Right, and so that he insulted everybody right off the bat. Got everybody all in an uproar. See, that reminds me of Trump.
Well, he has done more, like a bull in a china shop, to expose this rigged system and how politicians are bought and sold than anyone in our history. Yeah. And I think everyone actually owes him a great expression of appreciation for doing that, Kathy.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. And I even believe that God put him in that place to do just that. But he won't get my vote. Not after the things I've found out. No.
Well, everyone is welcome to vote their conscience. I mean, that's one of the great things about the country. But look how the Democratic primaries were more rigged than the Republican. I would never have imagined that could be the case.
Everything is rigged. Look at our courts. Our courts are rigged.
Yep.
Everything is rigged.
It is. So I think a lot of people are going to be, responding to that. They don't like a rigged system, and I think they're going to be more enthusiastic about the Donald, who I think Bernie Sanders supporters are going to put two and two together and realize that Hillary is a complete fraud, and they spent the whole campaign working against Hillary, and that it's a form of betrayal of Bernie Sanders of his own movement to suddenly now, declare his support for Hillary. I don't think that's going to go down with serious Bernie Sanders supporters.
Well, I kind of have it.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of have a theory, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's a heavy suspicion. I have a suspicion that not only in the UK, I have a feeling that they're going to override the Brexit vote and they're going to remain in the EU, and I think that's going to cause riots and mass chaos over there. And I think over here, what we're going to see is massive turnout, undoubtedly. Trump winning by a landfall, but them announcing that Hillary gets it to cause the same thing over here. Just a suspicion.
Well, I don't think those are unreasonable alternatives to contemplate, but I'm seeing a lot of reports from Europe saying that this cannot be reversed, that they see no way of reversing it, that the EU wants England, the UK to get out as soon as possible, so they can tidy things up in the European Union. But my frank opinion is this is going to lead other nations to leave the European Union, and that it's going to lead to the collapse of NATO, which is actually a very good thing, because NATO has become the military enforcement arm of the United States. Yeah. Like slaughtering the people of Libya when they were actually living a near idyllic life. Muammar Gaddafi was sharing the wealth of Libya with the Libyan people, national health care, national public education, national warehouses, where you could go to get all the food you needed. If you were short of food, you could go to a warehouse and the government would provide it for free. If you had a medical malady that could not be dealt with in Libya, the government would fly you and a friend or relative, all expense paid, anywhere in the world to have it dealt with. He was also undertaking the Great Waterworks project that would have turned northern Africa into a veritable oasis. And, sin of all sins, introducing the gold dinar, which would have rapidly become the currency of all of Africa. So while Hillary claims that the Gaddafi was, abusing the people of Libya, it was no more true than the claim that Assad has been abusing the people of Syria. And in fact, some of her now declassified emails reveal the true motives were that the Western banking interests did not like the idea of the gold dinar, and that France wanted to preserve Africa as its neo-colonial preserve. So none of it had any to do with Gaddafi other than he was trying to benefit the Libyan people and all of Africa.
Yep. You're right.
Well, my only concern if they dissolve NATO is that they'll put those resources into the UN.
I don't think the UN can make it either for the same reason that NATO won't.
Really?
Because, well, unless, now today I heard them say, and I hope I explained this right, I heard them say that they're going to dissolve the armies of the individual states, and they are going to now combine them all as one army.
Well, this is the idea of turning Europe into a super state, you see. But the fact is that goes against all the cultural traditions, all the histories of these individual countries, which are very distinct. I mean, countries like Belgium and the Netherlands, and not to mention the Scandinavian countries, they have all taken great pride in their history and their distinctive culture. And the fact is these marauding immigrants are turning everything into chaos. I mean, every single day I get a report of some mass rape, some gang rape that these crude savages are perpetrating on people in otherwise civilized states. I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah, it is. It is. I hope and pray that I can really put together this thing I know now is true, and be able to help people really, really see to the bottom of this matrix. Because it's time. We got to come out of this mess that we're in. We got to come out of our fog. And the only way that we're going to get anything done is we got to stand up. And there's a couple of things that we need to stand up to right away. Because they're killing us. They're literally killing all of us with the spray in the sky, with the food that they're doing, with the aspartame that they've now put in the sky. All of this stuff is making us sick, and it's making our children sick. And we've got to stand up. If we won't stand up for our own kids' lives, something's wrong.
Oh, I agree completely. But so many things are wrong. I mean, Kathy, it's just outrageous that the United States has sunk to this low level. In all my life, I never expected to see a country like this. I mean, we are dissipated. We are corrupt to the core. We have a Congress that's completely out of touch with the people. They're all millionaires. They have no idea what it is to lead a hand-to-mouth existence. We have trouble getting enough food on the table and keeping a roof over your head. These people have no idea the realities of life in the United States for the average American.
Yeah, they sure don't. And they don't care either. That's the big problem. They don't care. Even the individual ones that are serving in the Congress and in the House and the Senate, they don't care because they're getting the money. That's what it's all about, the money and the power. Mostly the money for the lower ones and for the higher up hierarchy of the government. That's the power. And they don't care if we're dead. They want us to be slaves, those of us that survive this. You know, I remember when Gorbachev said, "We will take you from within. We will never fire a shot at you." And I got to thinking about it today, and I said, you know what? They're killing us from the air. They're killing us from the water. They're killing us from the food.
Are you sure it wasn't Gorbachev? I mean,
or maybe it was Mikhail Khrushchev, yeah.
Yeah.
It was Khrushchev, yeah. And this is how they're doing it. And we're so busy looking out here for all the stuff going on around us that we don't see what they're actually doing.
Well, they're very clever about it, and they have so many ops going on at the same time. It's massively distracting. You don't have time to be reflective and sort out what you've just lived through when they launch another one of these attacks.
Yep, exactly. Exactly, and they're not giving us enough time in between to see truth. They're keeping our minds occupied with this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing. And by the time I get to noon, I don't make it past noon. Usually I'm going, oh my God, what a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I thought about it today. I said, this is not right. This is not what God put us here for, is to be in confusion. Whenever there is confusion around, the author of confusion is Satan, and we know that. So now we have to look at the evil, and where is the evil? Well, it's sitting in the Congress, it's sitting in the hierarchy of our governments.
There's no doubt about it. Our own government. We have met the enemy, and it is us.
That's it. And how do you fight us if you don't stand up and go and fight, you know?
No, you're completely correct.
It's insane. Watching what's going on in this country, and, you know, much smaller events are happening in other countries, and they're having these huge protests, and you know, here everybody's just sitting on their couch watching Netflix.
You know, if you look at it, almost every war that's ever taken place has a religious background. And so what did they do? They took one religion that existed way back when, and they've divided it into hundreds of thousands of them now. Why did they make that division? They did it to divide all of us from each other. We could never come together. We could never come in agreement. We could never stand side by side because we all hate each other because of our religions.
Well, I am myself an agnostic, so, you know, I've never felt much compulsion about religion one way or the other. But You're certainly right about most of the world. I've never thought it was much of a problem here in the United States, but I could easily be wrong. I would
Oh,
defer.
sure. Look at how many religions you have just in the United States. The Jehovah Witnesses don't like the Christians don't like the Jehovah Witnesses, the Christians don't like most other people in their religions, and then it depends on what kind of Christian you are, what flavor of the month you are there. You might like the Catholic religion or not like the Catholic religion, and then you have all the other ones that are fighting with each other, and it's like, oh my God, how did we not see this?
Yeah, I agree. Do you know most Americans now agree that a temporary ban on Muslims is a good idea?
I agree. I agree with that. I believe that what Trump is saying is right. I have no problem with what he's saying. I do believe that we need to protect ourselves because the big booba, whatever you want to call him, he's not protecting us. Our Congress is not protecting us. Neither is anybody else. Our own military is not protecting us. So we have to do this. We have to get them out. And at least until we can figure out who are they and why are they coming here. When you're bringing in all of these people that are 25-year-old men with no families, you know you got a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I agree
So
completely.
I agree that they take them and put them all in them FEMA camps if you don't want to pay for the deportation, and then one by one find out who is real and who is not.
But Kathy, they created those FEMA camps for us?
Yeah, well, I think we should fill them with them. That's what I think.
I like it.
Yep.
I mean, I think they should all be dismantled because it's just too tempting when you got, a resource like that, you can exploit it.
That's right. Now, most people believe that all of these military movement that they're seeing right now on the East Coast and wherever else is because they're getting ready to take over. And, of course, Obama is leaking this story out little by little from the White House in different forms so that people are in fear, always in fear. But the fact is that every spring and summer, our military is moving all around. And every spring and summer, the UN is over here training. Every year. So I don't have those fears that everybody else has. And if they come to my door, I don't have no guns anyway, so I don't care. But we can't live in fear. That's what's going to kill us. That's what's really going to destroy us. Don't have to pay attention to every word we hear.
They're trying to promote a sense of fear so we'll feel more dependent on the government, and then the government will protect us by taking away our guns. This is part of the reaction now to Orlando. We have gays who are recognizing that if they're unarmed, they're vulnerable. That, one of the fathers said that if any of those at the club had been armed, then this might not have happened. You got an article that the club members died because they were unarmed, not because they were gay. And in Southern California, there's a new adaptation of the old Gadsden flag of the snake, coiled snake, saying, "Don't tread on me," where they've given it a multicolored background, which is a gay emblem, and given it the new endorsement, #shootback. So I think the gays are coming around to recognize that the Second Amendment is important if they want to stay alive, and where we have all these studies showing that the greater the number of guns, the less the crime. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's absolutely the opposite of what Obama tells us, and I'm invariably floored when he talks about the growing gun violence in Chicago, because Chicago has like the strongest gun control laws in the whole country.
Yeah. It's a no-gun zone everywhere you go there. And they have the largest killing field of any place in the country. It's not anything to see them over 100 dead in a weekend. So yeah, it's bad. Let me see if Larry answered me here. He must have went to bed.
Well, he's not in real great shape physically.
No, he sure isn't. I just give that man the honor he is due, because he is a fighter to the end.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I had him on my show for 2 hours in a video interview. Very nice, very informative.
Yep. And so sick. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's trying to do his best to get the word out and let people understand why electing Hillary would be catastrophic for the country.
Yeah. That's for sure. Well, listen, Jim, we're at 10 minutes too already. That went quick. Got anything else you want to tell us?
Well, I think I mentioned that I'm completing a new book on 9/11, which I think will be very, very interesting to the American people, because we demonstrate that this was elaborately planned and that it was intended to subvert our foreign policy, as I've been explaining, pushed by Bibi Netanyahu. It has 8 sections with 3 chapters in each section to substantiate it. It demonstrates that all 4 of the crash sites for the 9/11 planes were fabricated or faked, albeit in different ways, that no plane crashed in Shanksville. There isn't even the pretense of evidence that any plane crashed there. I mean, it's a completely obvious case where the 2 reporters first on the scene both explained that the eerie aspect of the crash site was there was no sign that any plane had crashed there. And of course, the obvious explanation is that's because no plane had crashed there. The Pentagon is a real fraudulent case, because even the government's official approach of a Boeing 757 traveling close to 500 miles an hour, barely skimming the ground and taking out a series of lampposts, isn't even aerodynamically or physically possible. It turns out because of a combination of what's known as downdraft and ground effect, that a Boeing 757 could not have got closer than 60 or even 80 feet to the ground at that speed as a function of the laws of aerodynamics, where 80 feet is higher than the Pentagon is tall, and that if a plane traveling, say, 500 miles an hour had hit a stationary lamppost, the effect would be the same as if the plane had been stationary and hit by a lamppost traveling 500 miles an hour. It would have ripped the wing open. The fuel stored in the wings would have mixed with oxygen and exploded. The plane would have cartwheeled across the lawn, created a complete mess. But we have photo after photo after photo showing the Pentagon lawn is clear and clean and unblemished. One of my favorites is these 2 lime green civilian fire trucks are there extinguishing the very modest fires. And you have a huge expanse of lawn, and it's perfectly clear and green and unblemished. I used to say I'd expect Tiger to show up to practice his putting, but Tiger's been out of it for so long now that but many listeners wouldn't know what I meant. The hit point is only 10 feet high, 16 or 17 feet wide. There are unbroken windows, a chain link fence, a couple automobiles, 2 enormous spools of cable, but no massive pile of debris from a 100-ton aluminum airliner, no bodies, no seats, no luggage, no tail, no wings. Not even the engines, which are virtually indestructible, were recovered from the Pentagon. And it turns out that Flight 77, just like Flight 11, which is supposed to have hit the North Tower, were not even scheduled that day. We have Bureau of Transportation Statistics records where they keep data on all the takeoffs and landings of flights all over the country. And the Flights 11 and 77 weren't even scheduled. You'll be fascinated to learn about Flight 93, however, because pilots for 9/11 Truth were able to determine from air-ground communications that Flight 93 was over Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, after it had purportedly crashed in Shanksville. And I have FAA registration data showing that the plane used for Flight 93 was not deregistered or formally taken out of service until 28 September 2005, which is 4 years after it purportedly crashed. Similarly, with regard to the Flight 175 supposed to have hit the South Tower, In the videos we have, it's flying faster than is aerodynamically possible at that altitude. In fact, pilots for 9/11 Truth have determined that a Boeing 767 traveling that speed at that altitude would physically have come apart. It would have just broken apart in the air at that speed because it couldn't endure the stress that would be imposed. You see, the plane disappeared into the building with no collision effects. Now, the building had an intricate steel and lattice structure. And what it meant was that each floor consisted of a steel truss connected at one end to the core columns, at the other to the external steel support columns, which were quite formidable in and of themselves, filled with 4 to 8 inches of concrete, the variance because they had V-shaped grooves that were 4 inches deep. So at some place it'd be 4 inches, at other 8. But when you put together the fact that there was all this concrete and the buildings were 208 feet on the side, that means each floor represented an acre of concrete on a steel truss. And in the case of Flight 175 hitting the South Tower, it was intersecting with 8 of these floors of steel trusses with an acre of concrete. Which meant they should have crumpled, the plane should have crumpled against the wall, body seats and luggage fallen to the ground. The engines might have entered the buildings, but not most of the plane. And yet we have photographs from beneath the facades of the buildings. You could have reclined there in a lounge chair sipping Mai Tais in 9/11 and been perfectly safe. And this is true of Flight 11 in the North Tower as well as of the South. We have done frame-by-frame advance, and we find the plane disappears its entire length into the building in the same number of frames that it passes its entire length through air, which implies the physical absurdity that a massive 500,000-ton building provided no more resistance to the trajectory of an aircraft than air. They planted an engine at Church and Murray. Jack White, who was a legendary student with whom I collaborated on JFK research, also did a lot on 9/11. And he discovered Fox News footage where you see a white van and a group of men in FBI vests unloading something heavy. They put it underneath a steel scaffolding sitting on the sidewalk. If anything that massive had hit at high velocity, it would have done tremendous damage to the sidewalk. They even left a dolly behind, and get this, Kathy, it's the wrong kind of engine. It's an antiquated engine that wasn't being used in 767s at the time. And more recently, to compound the absurdity, they reported finding a landing gear that was wedged between 2 buildings. And get this, the commissioner of police had to point out that a piece of rope was still attached to it, which evidently they had used to help to lower it into place. And pilots for 9/11 Truth, again on the base air-ground communication, discovered that Flight 175, like Flight 93, was in the air, and that was over Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, long after it had allegedly hit the South Tower. And again, the FAA registration records show that it, like the plane used for Flight 93, were both deregistered on 28 September 2005, raising the questions, how can planes that weren't even in the air, Flights 11 and 77, have crashed on 9/11, and how can planes that crashed on 9/11, 93, and 175 have still been in the air 4 years later? I mean, it's a monstrous hoax perpetrated upon us by the American government.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there was a man with that flight MH370, is it? The first one that went missing at Diego Garcia.
Oh, yeah. Malaysia 70, right.
I would say maybe 7 months ago or so, there was a man who was using Google Maps, and he was looking down into the ocean, and he found MH370 intact under maybe 6 foot of water.
Where did he find it?
I cannot remember, and when I went to get that video back to copy it, it had been taken. I never heard a word about it since. Can't even remember who the man was.
I've got something to add to the 9/11 plane claims.
Please.
I used to fly FAR 103 ultralights, and I know that's a big difference from a big Boeing commercial jet. However, there's this thing called ground effect. And
yes,
when you get so close to the ground, In a large plane, it will cause a type of turbulence. Now, in an ultralight, it just kind of makes you floaty. But there is no way to fly a commercial aircraft just, that low above the ground. It's just not possible.
Barely skimming the ground as in Pentagon. You're exactly right. I had an aeronautical engineer write a whole article about this exact point, which is included in the book. And this book, like the other books, will appear at moonrockbooks.com. So, you're not going to read about it in the New York Times, but we're doing research. I bring together the best people on different aspects of these cases and put them together in these books in order to keep a record of what actually happened during our history where the government has so seriously misled us.
Oh, yeah, completely. And I tell people don't buy any of it because there was no wreckage in Pennsylvania. There was no wreckage at the Pentagon. And there really was no wreckage at the towers.
Well, what's interesting at the Pentagon is that they dropped some debris from a C-130 cargo plane that was circling the building. And one of the pieces they dropped, which has been cited as the most important evidence that a Boeing 757 actually hit the building, was a piece of fuselage that came from a Boeing 757, but it doesn't show any indications of having been involved in a violent crash. It doesn't show any indications of having been exposed to intense heat. And it has a piece of vine not indigenous to the Arlington, Virginia area ensnared in it. An attorney from Columbus, Ohio by the name of James Hansen traced that piece of fuselage back to a crash in Cali, Columbia in 1995, where it flew through a jungle and encountering the side of a mountain, and this piece of fuselage was stripped off the side, so they kept it around in order to use it as a planted footage, planted proof that a 757 had hit the Pentagon. But it backfired because it actually disproves the government's account. It shows it was planted proof.
Well, that's just like the motor that was found, the engine that was found at the Twin Towers. That was from a totally different aircraft than what they claimed.
Yeah, Church and Murray. You're exactly right. That's right. Would you believe they even left the dolly behind?
Oh, did they?
Yeah. That's ridiculous. All of this is in the book, and, I'm real proud of the contributors. It's really good stuff.
Wow.
I'm just looking at something very interesting here. How the government tells on themselves. One of my friends is writing to me, and she said, I got my bank statement today in the mail, and it said that after August 6th, 2016, they can close customers' accounts for any reason. Didn't give a reason, and take your money.
And take your money?
And take your money.
And take your money?
Yep.
It's bad enough they close your account, but to confiscate your money, I mean, that's going to breed distrust of banks. People are going to... I actually took money out of a local bank for just this reason, that I wasn't confident that I would be able to secure it if I needed it.
Well, that tells me that I'm pretty much right on the money. I think that we're going to see a crash in the dollar at the end of July. And this says after August 6th they can do this. So that figures about right in there.
Well, I wonder if we aren't going to have a run on the banks then.
Oh, absolutely. When they try to take our money, oh yeah. The best thing to do is to pay your bills, leave the money in for your bills, take the rest out. First of every month, take it out.
Kathy, I can't thank you enough for featuring me on your show.
Oh, I've loved having you, Jim.
Yeah.
And I will get in touch with you because I need to know how to really present this thing.
Sure.
I know I'm on the right track, but I got to get it.
You get a hold of me. I want to thank you both for being here. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, thanks for coming.
It was great to have you. You have a wonderful week, Jim.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you both.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye now.
And Kathy, I do have one thing to add to the financial, your expectations.
Uh-huh.
It was just in a local newspaper today that my hometown, Highland, Illinois, that they only have funding. Now, the state of Illinois is in this big budget thing, right? That they haven't made a budget in over a year or whatever.
Yeah.
Apparently, they only have enough funding to keep the school open until the middle of the year, until January. And then after that, they're talking about the school won't be, unless something happens, there won't be any school. So, and I've been saying this for well over a year now, that the state of Illinois is just, kicking the can along until the big crash happens. So I think this is more and more proof of that.
Yeah, it's just right on the money with timing. And it's interesting to me, too, that I did receive notice today that, actually, I received it a couple of times today and then a few days ago, that there is a plan in place. Mr. Trump, are you listening? There is a plan in place for your assassination on the 16th of July. So be careful, Mr. Trump, and make sure you got plenty of help out there.
Wow. Is there anything significant with that? Is that like during any type of certain event or?
No, the only thing I know is that during this last month, on the 16th, that's when Obama said he would fly the flags at half-mast till the 16th. Then I think what happened is they couldn't quite accomplish what they wanted in June, so they pushed it ahead to July. Because then you had, after that was the blood donors. They would only receive the blood until the 16th of June. But see, I think all of this was actually done ahead of time, and it was meant for the 16th of July. So knowing this, they would have to create some kind of another false flag, a distraction, so that we wouldn't be paying attention to what was going on with Trump. That we would have, all eyes would be drawn over to this distraction. So hopefully this word of knowledge will cause them to change their minds. Push it ahead a little longer, I don't know. But,
wow.
But I'm going to tell what I know, so. And I can't tell how I know it because I don't want to get anybody else in trouble.
Okay.
So anyway, we had a good night tonight. I do want to end it by saying I am still getting phone calls. I am still getting emails. What do you need help for, Kathy? We're here. I want to tell you something, people. I never knew that many people cared.
Wow.
And I'm quite sure I've had over 100 notices today of people either calling me on the phone, writing to me on my Facebook, and sometimes in my email, and all of them, every last one, saying, how can we help you? What do you need, Kathy? What happened?
Wow. Well, that's good.
And I wrote back to all of them saying thank you so much for caring and remembering me. I got letters from Africa, people I didn't even know.
Wow.
I had letters from Australia. I had letters from the UK, everywhere. And especially a lot of them out of Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. And a lot of them from the United States. And I'm just so grateful that God took what was meant for evil and he showed me something so good, that people are listening to me and they do care. And if I am ever in trouble, I will certainly notify Mike and he will let you all know I'm in trouble. And don't ever expect me, because I never will, ask you for a dime for me.
Right on.
I might for other people, but not for me.
We do have a late caller.
Okay.
All right. Area code 517. Go ahead.
Hello. Good evening, Mike and Gabby.
Hey.
Good evening.
This is Smitty.
Well,
from
hi,
Michigan.
Smitty. Yep. How are you?
How are you this evening?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Just wanted to call in. You was talking earlier about distractions.
Yeah.
In Lansing, Michigan, they had a drill at a high school for an active shooter again. So watch for something to happen in the news.
Yep.
Because the
Will
last
do.
time they had an active shooter at a school, they had Orlando.
Oh, Lord.
You
It's just
remember
getting...
they had a drill in, I think it was in Louisiana somewhere, and it was at a high school. It was an active shooter drill, and shortly after that, we had Orlando.
Yeah.
Now they got this one in Lansing. I'm waiting to see what comes out.
Yeah, it's amazing. They just keep doing the same thing over and over. And you know that is the definition of insanity, right? You do the
Yes.
same thing over and over and over again. I'm so
Expecting
bored
a
with it, I don't
different
even
outcome.
pay any attention anymore. The first thing I do now, when these things take, I'm digging for what else is going on. Because they're up to something. Usually it's in the finances. Now this announcement with this bank thing today tells me I'm right. It's in the finances. And so now I'll be watching consistently for that. Because they're going to take your eyes off the finances by all of these false flags. And then we miss what they're doing behind our backs until it's too late.
Well, what I've heard about the taking your money is that the police, if they believe that your finances came from an illegal act, they can do that. But they were on investigation in Oklahoma. Police department was just going up. They can swipe your bank card and just take your money from you.
Yeah.
Take
but
your
this
car
is-
and everything.
This is talking about the banks. The banks, after August 6th, have the right to close your accounts and take your money.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's what the letter she received from her bank today. So this is a really serious thing. And people better pay attention. You know, if you have to use a bank because your check is going to go in the bank, get the darn thing out of there that day. Leave what you got to pay your bills, and then that's it. Pull the rest of the money out.
Yeah, that's where I get mine is direct deposited. So
I do too. And, you know, Social Security, they don't want to do it any other way. That's the way they want to do it. But it wouldn't matter anyway with Social Security, because if the government says don't write a check, they ain't going to write a check.
I guess I'll be starting my own bank.
I figure I've got to find a tent. It's time. It really, truly is time, people, to find like-minded people and get in position. It is time for that.
Well, I've been ready for 40 years. I've been saying that that this country is going to revolt, and my ex-wife told me, she said, the only time the people will revolt in this country is when enough satisfied people become dissatisfied. And we're at that stage now.
Yeah, I sure was this morning.
Well, I mean, you can tell just by the way the way Trump raced through 16 candidates on the Republican Party. And they're saying, oh, Hillary's got 10 million more votes than he does. Well, she only had one candidate to go through, was Bernie Sanders, and she still ain't through with him. Yeah. And she still might not make the presidential race. She still might be indicted.
Well, all I ask is this year, when everybody decides to vote, you decide to vote on what's good and not on the lesser of two evils, because evil is evil. There is no lesser.
That is true. I vote for the person I think has my best interest in mind.
You know, I don't know about this Gary Johnson, but Mike, you do, don't you?
I know a little bit. I mean, I haven't really dug into him. Some people say that he has not so good ties, and I'm sure if he's made it as far as what he has, that he's got to have some kind of a skeleton in the closet. But overall, I think it's a pretty good guy.
My ex-wife likes him.
I know that he's gaining ground.
That's
in
good.
the independent party, and that's interesting.
I mean, I think he's the best option. I mean that by far. I don't think that he is choosing a lesser of an evil in any way.
Well, we should probably on this channel be really taking a look at him and reporting what we're finding, because that's what we're here for, is to tell the truth. And I can tell you the truth. I know that Trump is not the person to go into the presidency. I think that God used him to reveal all the things he's done. God has used him to stand the people up and understand this is what we got to do. But I also believe there's a very evil side to him as well. And so he's not going to get a vote from me. I'm not going to do the lesser of two evils. It's because evil is evil. For me, if
Trump
Gary
is
Johnson...
egotistical guy.
What'd you say?
I say Donald Trump is a pretty egotistical little guy.
Yes, he is. You know, if Gary Johnson has even a half of Trump's courage, then maybe he's okay. But if he has no courage to back up anything else, he's not going to go nowhere, because this is definitely going to take a very courageous man to do this. And I'm saying man. I do not believe that the United States, in the state we're in right now, should have a woman president, of any woman. I don't care who it is, because we have too much compassion and not enough logic in us to do what's necessary to do. We would be making decisions from emotion instead of making decisions from logic.
They vote Smitty for president. I'd cut everybody's wages
there
in
you go.
I'd be assassinated just for talking about cutting their wages, canceling all their benefits.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to stay back here in the position God put me in, and hopefully we can get some more truth out here and wake a few people up, and I'll be happy with that.
Hey, Kathy.
Uh-huh.
Do you think we'll have fluffy pillows in camp?
Not unless you somehow bring it with you. My backside might serve as fluffy pillow. No, they ain't taking me to camp. They'd get rid of me before they got me to the door.
I don't even think they'll take me to the door.
Survive.
Yeah. See, this is the thing.
Try to organize everybody.
Yeah, this is it. How do we do that, Smitty?
Well, one is to start like we're doing, is getting the word out there, and then getting everybody on the same page. You organize. I mean, it worked for the unions for years. It worked for the unions. I was a union iron worker. I'm retired, and it worked well with the unions. You know, they didn't like what was going on. They stopped work. Hey, there's no work getting done. And, you know, that really, America should do that. They should go on strike. All of Americans, right down to the kid that bags the groceries in the grocery store, which there still is a few of them left.
Boy, I've been saying that for 5 years. Every year for 5 years, I've tried to get them to strike just even for 3 days. If we stop buying from these corporations, which are really running our country with their money, if we stop buying for 3 days, we would break those organizations. And that would put all the power back in the hands of the people. But we won't.
Yeah, because
we won't take the 3 days, Smitty, and come away from our conveniences.
That's true, because people are out for themselves. You got to get everybody in a brotherhood like state of mind. You got to back your neighbor up.
That's what I'm hoping, this information I have, and when I get it put together, I'm hoping that's this is going to do it, because I know that God put it in our hearts today, my friend and I know that He's calling us to do this. So we'll do the best we can putting it together and then presenting it, and from there it's all up to you guys what you do.
Well, in 3 days they'll come to the table and they'll say, "Okay, what do you want?" They'll have kind of a snooty attitude about it. So you say, "Well, we're not ready yet," and you take a week off.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, they say, "Okay, what do you want? We'll give you anything you want."
Yep.
It'll take 2 weeks to shut them down.
That's all right, because we know to prepare ahead of time. We're ready for the 2 weeks.
Yes, and I've said this a million times. How many, with the way DC is, and they're raising their own wages automatically. How many companies, viable companies out there are still in business that pays its employees 5 times more than what it makes?
Not too many.
And yeah, I mean, this is the way it's our governing body. Let's not confuse our government from our governing bodies. It's the governing bodies that we have today that are misleading us, and it's actually legalized organized crime, or if you go by the Constitution, it's illegal organized crime.
Yep. That's absolutely.
I don't know any former employer I could go up to and say, "Oh, by the way, you owe me my salary for the rest of my life." Wait a minute, you've only worked for me for 3 years, so
all those corporations that are saying that they can't pay the people more money are darn liars, because all they got to do is stop using the money they should be paying us for lobbying expenses that they're giving the government, and they would have more than enough to give everybody a nice raise.
This all started back when Michael Douglas came out with a movie, and Charlie Sheen in Wall Street, when he said greed is good, and he had a meeting, and they said, "Yeah, why ain't we doing it? Greed is good. Let's pay our people less." But sooner or later, common logic says that if a father back in the day, got his company going from the help of his neighbors, his friends, and his family, he got that company, he made it what it was, and when he died, he left it to the kids, and the kids said, "Okay, we need to make our millions and billions now," so they moved overseas. But what they didn't see is when they closed, let's say, a factory that employed 800 people, you just took 800 people out of the potential purchasing market. And not only that, you probably, for lack of better terminology, pissed them off. They're not going to buy your product, especially since it's made over there. And all these big loans and stuff to help, like the first George Bush, I think it was, gave $400 million to South Africa to help fight AIDS. It didn't go there to help fight AIDS. It went there to an evil dictator who treated his people like crap, so America could have a company in there, and they could have their companies and exploit cheap labor. That's why all these people over there in the Middle East are pissed off at us, because they think, well, this is how Americans are, and we're not.
That 400 million must be a magic number, because they just gave 400 million to Honduras. And that is buying them the rights to all of the gold and silver and diamonds and other precious metals.
And, we gave $30 billion, or Bill Clinton gave $30 billion to Mexico, which we'll never see back.
No. No. I don't know.
It's corrupt.
I know the way out is we got to bring the people out of the matrix. That I'm going to work on full time now. And once that we're able to do that and have people see, they're going to be as angry as I was this morning, and they'll stand up, because Their children are involved here. Their families are involved. They are involved personally. And when they see really what this government has been doing all these years, what their ultimate goal was, they'll come right out of the matrix standing up. I really believe it.
Well, I've been saying
If
for
I
years.
lived in D.C. today, I'd have been over at the Congress screaming.
I scream at them every day. What are you people doing?
I know, but they don't hear me. I would have been there where they would hear me. And that really is what has to be done.
I've been saying for years that what this country needs is a common sense party.
Yeah,
And
amen to that.
Since that's got out, I've heard Obama use it 13 times. He uses the term, but he don't know how to apply it.
He has
and then recently, if you noticed over the last year, people on Facebook will talk about getting rid of the establishment in D.C., and now all of a sudden everybody's against the establishment.
Well, the establishment is pretty wicked and cruel right now. But it isn't the establishment, it's the people in the establishment who are so corrupt now that you can't, only God could come in and clean them up, and he will only do it if it is their will. He's not going to go against their will. So if they choose to remain corrupt, then we have to choose to remain away from, I almost said it in Spanish, away from, out front of them, away from all the corruption, not accept it. No more. No more.
Well, that's what we're saying this year's election. Everybody's saying no more.
Yeah,
that's the reason why Trump is so popular, because people have had enough.
Yeah.
Say, here's a man that's got all this money, he can't be bought. Nobody's going to be able to buy him, but now he's taking in donations because he's getting less airtime from the news than he used to.
Well, I think we better take a closer look at the money. It's always all about the money. You follow the money. And I think people have been so happy to hear all the words that he speaks, because he's speaking what he knows we feel inside, what we're going to respond to. But they haven't really vetted him either. He's talking about vetting Clinton, but nobody's vetted him, really. And he needs to be vetted.
No, it's true. He's popular because he's not politically correct. He probably actually is politically correct, but because he's heard enough from people about all the political correctness madness needs to stop, that he just said, okay, I'm going to go with what I'm hearing from people. And it started when, I remember when the NBC said, no, we're not going to have him head the Miss America pageant anymore, or the Apprentice program. And then you got all these other things. Everybody else jumped on, oh, you can't say that about immigrants. He wasn't saying about immigrants, legal, whether they be Mexican or whatever. He was saying about illegals. And they always want to mess that term up. It's funny they can't say Islamic, radical Islamic terrorist, but they can sure say legal instead of illegal, what he says.
Yep. It's just all a game. You have
hard on everything else.
You just have the good cop and the bad cop game. That's what this is. The Hegelian dialect. That's what we got to keep paying attention to until we figure out how to get to the bottom of the matrix and we come out of this mess. We're done.
I think we can all agree we don't want Hillary.
No, And if every American stood up right now and said, ain't voting for nobody, that's it. Imagine what they'd do.
Well, that's a Richard Pryor movie, none of the above.
Oh, I
But
didn't see that, but that's cool.
but if nobody votes, then you have like Hillary would have maybe Chelsea and Bill voting for her, and of course, Donald Trump, I think's got a larger family, so he would probably win.
Yeah.
I don't know about Gary Johnson. I don't know nothing about this guy, but my ex-wife likes him, and she's a staunch Republican.
Mike, do you remember when the convention is?
No. I think I saw something about it today, but I didn't pay much attention to it.
Could that be around the 16th, you think?
I thought it was around the 20-something. Oh, 17.
It's the 17th?
Yes.
Uh-huh. That just dawned on me.
That's kind of what I was curious about, whether or not,
So he wouldn't see the convention if they're successful. So every American that is going to that convention, you surround him. Especially you bikers, get out there and surround him. Not that I like him or I want to vote for him, but I know that if he is for some reason assassinated, it will create immediate martial law. So we need to protect ourselves, and that means we need to protect him.
I'm going to be there, Cleveland, Ohio, July 17th.
Get up there as close as you can, Smitty. And matter
I'm
of
gonna
fact,
be right
Mike, you
outside
should
for all
help
them.
him stream live.
And why is this that these ranchers out here in Oregon are called terrorists for wanting to protect their rights to their leases on their land out there for their cattle, and yet these people that terrorize people at the Trump supporters. One guy was beaten really bad. He had to be hospitalized, and they jump up and down on cars, yet these people are just called protesters.
Yeah, but we know that they're provocateurs, and that's why I'm saying at that convention, we need bikers all around. We need truckers all around. We need patriots all around. Not worried about Trump, not worried about Clinton, worried about America. And we need to protect America. I mean, really,
Well,
it is time to stand up.
Riot. I think there'll be a huge riot in Cleveland because they've already asked for our hometown police, any available police that we have in Coldwater, Michigan. I know Indiana's sending some. Fort Wayne, Indiana, they're sending some police to the Cleveland convention because they're expecting riots between Trump supporters that have had enough of this provocateurs that they're end up either somebody's going to get shot.
You better pray that all these extra police that are being sent in are not being sent in from federalized police departments, because that will be your provocateurs.
Yeah, them police that stood back and let these provocateurs or protesters, or I call them terrorists, they're terrorizing because if it ain't their way, then it's the wrong way, and then they're going to yell and scream and punch and kick, and yet they're supposed to be the democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a republic.
Unreal.
It's for the republic for which it stands.
I'm just thinking of something off subject, but it's in my mind, so I'm going to say it before I go off air. There was a lady in here named Barbara last night, and she wanted me to call her. I could not get in my email until very early this morning. They wouldn't let me in, so I couldn't get back there to get your phone number, and I by then had so many phone calls and so many letters that I still have a long ways to go to catch up here, but I know that it was hacked, and I can't do anything, but I know all the messages that were being sent out, and they were different messages to a lot of people. I was in Turkey. I was being held in Turkey, and needed $1,500 there, and I was in some other place that I lost my passport. And people, I'm not traveling anywhere. You couldn't get me on a plane now if you paid me to get on that plane. So you know
Well,
that it ain't me.
We're going to have to send you $1,500 because you're in the Watchman zone.
There you are. Yeah.
Did you get back control of your email, or?
Well, kind of, sort of. Now what happens is every time a new email comes in, it's marked red. And I have to go back and I have to physically mark it unread, so I know that I have to go through those.
Okay.
And I don't know what to do to fix that problem. I think that's a Yahoo problem. I think.
That's probably somewhere in the settings, I would think.
Well, I went there. I did what you told me to do last night. Was it you? Somebody. Somebody. I was following somebody's orders about the settings. Was that you?
Yeah, for changing the font?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
copied and
so-
pasted what I Googled.
Yeah. And so I knew to go back in those settings, and that's how I got finally my email up. I kept giving the password, the new one, and they wouldn't take it. They just would not take it.
Wow.
Until I relinquished and gave them my phone number. That's what this was all about,
Wow.
was to get my phone number.
Interesting. I know they hit me up every time I log into Yahoo wanting my phone number, and I won't give it to them.
All these years I haven't given it, but they forced me this time. So, but thank God it's almost over, and I don't think I'll be doing internet stuff all that much longer. When the banks are done, I'm done.
Oh, well, yeah. I think the internet will be done about that time.
Yeah. Yep. They're certainly working on it with all their censorship and their garbage they're doing.
Yep, I agree.
Remember the movie Enemy of the State with Will Smith?
I heard about that one.
That movie, whenever they put a movie out like that, they're usually way ahead with it. They're usually out in front of it way before the movie comes out. And the stuff at Will Smith's movie, Enemy of the State, where they had camera surveillance everywhere, they already had that for years. They had a thing in New Mexico that would read your barcode on your vehicle, could tell where you was all the time. When you cross those diamond things that look like sideways diamonds or whatever, or they're not diamonds really, but they're it'd be six-sided, and they're in freeways. You drive over them, you pull up to them at traffic lights. Now that traffic directional signal, it reads, and a camera sits there, watches to see if you have your seatbelt on if you run a red light. That's not what it's there for. It's there for surveillance.
I love this Skype stuff because you mention the name of the movie and the lady upstairs writes to me and says, "I've got it." Cool.
It's just good TV there.
Yeah, yep.
All right. I'll leave you guys go. It was a great show this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thanks.
guys take care, and as soon as I can, I'll get back with you. Are you guys still with me?
I'm still with you.
I hit some red button here, and some stranger came up from Africa. And I said, "What's this?" I need to go to bed. See, I just blocked these guys. I didn't even...
I allowed somebody the other day. I've been waiting for the whole, 500 times they say hi and I ignore them. But I haven't heard nothing.
No, I just block them after the first time. When they only say hi, I already know what that is. So
Yep.
bye.
But
If you got a message, put it in there and I'll accept you. But no message, no.
I haven't gotten a hi yet, so.
Oh, Lord. Well, I will see you guys next week, and next week we have who?
Wolfgang is one of them.
King Hallbig, and then we're going to have Adrienne Miranda on. She is a friend of mine, and she has been trying for 10 years. It'll be 10 years now when we get her on, that the people killed her son in, I believe it was New Jersey. And when we did the research on it, we found out that we had bumped into the New Jersey Mafia.
Yikes.
And so she's going to tell her story and share with us where she's at with this now.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think I should be hearing from Larry tomorrow, find out if he comes on the following week.
Okay, sounds good.
And at one point, I'm going to probably do a special show, and it'll be with Vaughn when we're ready to present all this stuff.
Okay. Well, I think we need to kind of promote that for a little while before we do it, and I'll make up a nice little kind of commercial thing for it as long as time allows me.
I think that's a good idea because this is probably the most important thing I've done in all my years on the air.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
For myself, anyway. I'm not speaking for you.
And it's good timing. It's really good timing. I mean, I can't tell you how angry I was this morning when I sat in the chair across from my friend upstairs and I said, I have had it. I am not living in these lies no more. I'm going to punch Satan right in the nose. I've had enough. She just smiled. She knows me.
Jen's over there giggling.
Yeah. But it is time to punch him in the nose, and the only way we can do that is stand together. We have to do this together.
I agree.
So we'll get it done.
Yeah, if we try to do this alone, it's just going to get real ugly real fast.
Well, you wouldn't get to say enough, you'd end up in jail real quick.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, so we have to do it in a way that they can't get us all.
Yep.
When they see how many people actually know the truth and come out of that matrix, they're done.
Yep.
So it feels good to be out of the matrix, but it's also very frustrating because you want to move right now.
Yeah.
You want to take on your enemy. I even said to my friend, I wish God would take me home right now, give me his best horse and his best angels and a good sword, and I'll come back. Yeah, it got me energized pretty fast.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, I will see you guys soon. And everybody have a wonderful 4th of July. And be cautious with your money that's coming in on the 1st. Please. Take it out of the bank. Just leave in there what you have to and take it out of the bank because this is a long weekend.
That's easy for me.
And they are letting you know ahead of time what their plans are. So.
That's going to be easy for me.
Me too. Only got 3 bills and that's it.
I don't get anything. So.
Yeah. Okay, you guys. We'll talk to you soon, and God bless all of you, and God bless America.
Right on. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.